Good afternoon, good evening. That is not NBC, that is that is CAN TV Channel 21. And I'm Stephen Carter. I'm Silver, the host for the Black Star Still Rising, sponsored by the Black Star Project. It's going to be a great evening today. I have a marvelous guest that I'm going to introduce to you in a few minutes, and with some marvelous news to many of you folks, especially in the Bronzeville, Southside, all over Chicago. It's going to be great information that you better tighten up, get your pencil and papers out. I got a chance to use my Latin, my 3 years of Latin. I'm going to say nota bene, make a note, all right? The second thing I'm going to say is viva voce. You're going to be able to pass on this information because it's so important, not just because of this program, but the implications for nonprofit organizations as how to get things done, how to do things. Let me do this shout out. I do it up front, so we don't forget it at the end of the program, get too rushed to talk about the people that make this possible. First of all, we have a shout out to the executive director of CAN TV, and that's Mr. Darius Hillman. He has made this possible for organizations like the Black Star Project to come to you, our audiences, and let you know what's going on in the community. Another shout out to our marvelous studio producers, and that's the Imani Payne and Rocio Santos. Raise your hand so our folks can see you. Okay, I'm going to see you on TV. Raise your hand. Very good. And I got to give a shout out to, how can I go any further? Without the shout out to Philip Jackson, the memory of Philip Jackson, the founder of the Black Star Project. And of course, his successor, the executive director, Gloria Smith, that keeps the wheels rolling. And last but not least are the associate producers for this program. And that's Dr. Mike Washington. I said Washington, not Johnson or Jackson. Mike Washington, who is the associate producer for guest engagement and our associate producer for media engagement. That's Ellis Taylor. Thank you. Welcome here today, you folks out at the Kroc Center to get pencil and paper out. You folks at the Atlas Center, a lot of good information. I'm going to introduce now friend and D9 brother, my Kappa brother. We competitive at times, but that's my D9 brother, my Kappa friend, and that is John E. Adams, who is the executive director. Give me the name of the full name.
Sure. The Bronzeville Trail Taskforce, Inc.
You're going to remember that name for a number of reasons that he's bringing things to it. But you should know a little bit about John. John was the former comptroller, if I got it correctly. With CFO, Chief Financial Officer for Rainbow Push. Now that shows something.
That shows for over 16 years.
16 years. You came right out of college in that big program. But
I wish I'm not that young.
This is the financial wizard, all right? Yeah. He is now going to be the executive director of the program we're going to talk about today. Now, I told you he's a member of KSI. What chapter? Where you made it?
Chicago alumni.
Chicago alumni. Mm-hmm. Is that where you made it?
1980.
That's a good year. A good year. You are now the executive director, and before that, you were the executive director. You were paying the whopping sum of $1 a year.
Man,
that's dedication. That's dedication. $1 a year.
And Mr. Carter, they owe me the dollar.
They still haven't written that check for me.
That's right. They still owe me the
dollar. John, we've been reading about this, and please tell us about what this marvelous benefit that you have just gotten from the Mellon Foundation. Okay. Tell our audience.
We're delighted. So I won't go into the history. We talked about that in one of your earlier shows. But what's taking place now is that our organization, the Bronzeville Trail Taskforce, has received a substantial grant from the Mellon Foundation. And that grant is for $900,000.
Oh, excuse me. Repeat that again.
It's 900,000.
That's a little bit short of $1 billion.
Over 3 years.
Okay.
Over 3 years, and Mellon is going to fund essentially two specific programmatic activities. One is to conduct archival research of the Stockyard line, and for those of you who are new and didn't catch my first show with Mr. Carter, our organization is the advocate to get the city of Chicago to repurpose the abandoned Kenwood L line to a linear park, to a walking, running, and biking trail that runs essentially down 40th Street, east to west, from Federal, just west of State Street, all the way to Lake Park. Right. And just a block short of the 39th Street, 40th Street pedestrian overpass that takes you to the Lakefront Bike Trail. So via the Bronzeville Trail, as we have named it in the city, has welcomed that name. Communities west of the Dan Ryan will be able to come over to Dan Ryan via Root Street, turn left for 1 block, jump on the Bronzeville Trail, and go all the way to the lakefront. And then we don't know at this time how once you get to Lake Park, how you will access the Lakefront Bike Trail.
That's still part of the study.
That's still part of the study, and the research is taking place with architects, engineers. But it suffice to say, in the worst case scenario, you would come down to Lake Park, and in 1 block there's an existing pedestrian overpass.
Now the history of that line, and I have a little history. I share this with you. Mm-hmm. My grandfather, who I never met, he took that L line when he came from Alabama, Coley, Alabama, and during the Great Migration in 1914, and that was the job that he had in the stockyard. Tell our audience about a little bit of history about the stockyards and how the skill sets that were learned in Alabama were brought to the stockyards.
And before I forget, Steve, we need to interview you about your grandfather.
Okay, yes.
Right through the Civil War, there were a number of independent stockyards that exist over in the Bridgeport area, Packingtown community. And they came together in 1865 to form the Chicago Union Stockyards. And the Stockyard Gate is still there, and that inscription is right over the top of approximately 40, about 41st and Halsted.
Right.
Anyway, in 1882, the meat processing companies petitioned the city, along with a railroad, for permission to lay rail from the stockyards to the lakefront.
Okay.
And for those who don't know, Chicago really has some fascinating history. At the turn of the century, 1900, the population of Chicago was 1.7 million.
That early?
In 1900, yeah. And so everyone pretty much know, or should know, that Chicago was the crossroads of the United States.
Folks came together, from the west to the east, from the east to the west.
That's right.
Right there in the middle.
Or south.
Or south.
And go south.
Right.
And so it's that rail line expansion that literally propelled Chicago to be the transportation hub of the country, and ultimately the meat processing capital of the world.
And what did Carl Sandburg call us?
Hog butcher of the world.
Hog butcher of the world.
That's right.
Wow, what kind of history is that? But tell us about the people that came to work in the stockyards, how they were mislabeled, and what the skill sets were.
Sure. So for the most part, because Chicago was already a burgeoning metropolis, you certainly had a lot of immigrants coming to Chicago, Italians, Germans, Polish, etc., African Americans, right? And certainly there was already a successful African American community already here in Chicago, pre-World War I.
I got some history on that too.
And so, as we used to joke when I was growing up, Steve, that our folk who migrated from the South They knew how to cut up a pig from the rooter
to the tutor.
to the tutor.
To the tutor.
And
Didn't
so
waste nothing.
Didn't waste a thing. And so literally, and this is so intuitive, that rural African Americans came to Chicago and they already knew how to slaughter livestock. And so they got on that rail line, went into the stockyards, and they were hired on the spot because they had the skill set.
And grandmother and my mother lived on Bowen right off of Cottage Grove.
Oh,
so that was the end of the line.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And that's all the rich history behind African Americans, what I would like to call certainly the foundation of Chicago's black middle class, if I may. Yeah. Because like my dad, born in 1910, many rural African Americans had little or no education.
Okay.
Or they went only so far because they, worked on
Third,
in the fields,
maybe.
Yeah, plantation, etc., sharecrop. Mm-hmm. And so my father could not read. Mm-hmm. It was years later that I learned.
You didn't know he couldn't.
I never knew he couldn't read. But those African Americans who came here, pre and post World War I, their children went to school.
Let me just bring up one quick thing, and you were aware of this too. We were mislabeled as strike breakers. That's how we were kept from certain things because we were brought up from the South to, I'm not going to say strike break, but to increase. They needed more of us in the stockyards back then.
Yeah. Steve, you can say it. We were brought up. It's all right. It's okay. And that's factual.
Strike breakers who were trying to take care of their families. That's the point.
Well, and the interesting dynamic to that, certainly, Steve, is perhaps the wages sharecropping with 30 cents a week, whereas the wages working in meat processing, perhaps at that time, might have been $2 a day.
So my grandfather was trying to take care of my mom, my aunties, and uncles.
Okay, all of that.
What's
and then
going
on the weekend,
that's so terrible.
Yeah, that's right. And then on the weekend, he partied down with some jazz and blues.
Got a little
on Sunday,
bathtub gin.
On Sunday,
Daddy must have
he got
told you
religion.
some stories, right?
Yeah, he got religion in Queen Chapel. So it's just such rich history, and there's a very interesting African American dynamic to it, because certainly rural African Americans who came to Chicago, who worked in meat processing, had no interest in joining white unions, right? They just left Jim Crow.
Right.
And now you want me to join a white union who don't want me in the first place?
Let me think about that.
Who don't want me in the first place? Whereas your grandfather's children saw joining the unions as a civil rights issue.
Okay. Yes.
Right? And so eventually, by the time you get into the 30s and the 40s, rural African Americans, as they migrated, and African Americans born here who understood civil rights, the need for civil rights, the need to attain civil rights, came together, and in fact pushed for civil rights. African Americans joining the union. Now, that being said, and you made the point about how they came here and had the skill set, and yes, so for the meat processing magnates, it was literally, Steve, a win-win.
Yes.
Right? On the one hand, they had a labor force who had no interest in unionization.
Okay.
But on the other hand, they had a very skilled labor force who did the job.
Okay.
So that created tension between blacks and whites who were in the meat processing industry, because African American stockyard workers, meat processing workers, were in fact used as scabs to help try to break and deter the union. But certainly they were persuaded that they would have better working conditions, better wages, benefits, etc. And understand, working in stockyards was really the bottom of the barrel.
I saw that because we had class trips. I went to Corpus Christi at 49th and King Drive, South Park then, and we took the L right at 38 38th in Michigan and 38th in Indiana.
Okay,
We took
there you
right
go.
to the stockyards and
Yes.
watched that process.
Yes.
That was a sight to see, and that's for
Yeah.
another program.
Sure, and books have been written that
Yeah.
ultimately help provide federal legislation to improve the working conditions in stockyards.
Yes.
So that's the history, the background of what was the stockyard line. 1947, the CTA began to run the Kenwood L on that same rail line. Well, first and foremost, as I mentioned, the rail line came in 1882. In 1903, because the trains were killing so many people, the city required the trains around the city to run on embankments.
Okay.
And that's where the embankment came about.
Ground level.
They were grade level at first.
Okay.
And so in 1907 is when the embankment opened, if I may, where the same rail line, the Stockyard Line, ran on that embankment. And the Stockyard Line was essentially an industrial and commercial line, bringing in livestock, bringing out produce.
Right. Let me stop you just
Sure.
real quick. I have to tell our audience, this is going to be a program that John is talking about now that it's got to take at least 2 or 3 other sessions. We're going to get through quite a bit today, and but you can believe, John, you're going to be invited back for another
Okay.
show. There's
Thank
a lot
you,
of
Steve.
depth as the progress, as the milestones come along.
Yes.
I'm going to invite you back, and you tell me when's a good time to talk
Okay.
about. Describe what's going to happen on those embankments. We've seen it.
Yes.
We've seen it deteriorate even more.
Yeah.
Tell us what's going to happen. What's that going to mean to Bronzeville?
Sure. So these projects have proliferated over the last 3 or 4 decades, Steve. And so in the marketplace, they're called rails to trail projects.
And there's one on the north side.
And certainly one of the poster child of a rail to trail project is the Bloomingdale 606 Trail.
Poster child for now.
For now.
For now.
For now. And
That's going to change.
They're all unique, right?
Okay.
They all truly are unique. And one of our unique features that doesn't exist with the Bloomingdale Trail is we will connect with the lakefront bike trail.
You can't beat that.
You can't beat that. In fact, Bloomingdale Trail activists are working with the city now. In fact, I think it cleared the Planning Commission, Steve, to have a tunnel under the Kennedy so that they can get to the lakefront.
Like we have our.
We'll be right there. We'll be right there.
There's a few things you got to talk about.
That's
One
right.
is the connection with IIT and
Oh,
how
my
they're
gosh.
supporting. Oh, go ahead, please.
Oh my gosh, that we have an amazing partnership, Steve, with Illinois Tech, formerly known as the Illinois Institute of Technology. So, unbeknownst to us, one of their landscape architect professors, a woman named Maria Villalobos Hernandez, taught a course using that embankment in her landscape architecture course. And so literally we started our project. Neither one of us knew about the other. But in early 2022, we had the good fortune of developing a relationship with one of their trustees who brought us to the table at Illinois Tech. And through their iPro curricula, Illinois Tech has been teaching an accredited college-level course called the Bronzeville Trail. And so they just completed the 5th consecutive semester teaching an applied science course, meaning that there are students in the class who are majoring in the humanities, majoring in education.
Are you going to talk about ACE?
Yeah.
Tell us about
that's
ACE.
Right. And so we are so profoundly impressed with the curricula that the Bronzeville Trail Taskforce is going to launch its own program for high school age kids to that is called an ACE program.
What does it stand for?
Synonymous with STEM, but ACE stands for Architecture, Construction, and Engineering.
And what does that mean for the community and the folks, young folks especially?
Well, certainly what it means is that there'll be more African Americans who will be in those careers, who may someday, form their own firms and businesses, right? Pass down that wealth, or because they're incentivized by our program, they may decide to go work in any one of 41 trade unions that are part of the construction industry. So in many of those positions, after just a few years, you have people making six-figure salaries.
How much?
Working. Yeah, I need to get back to work. Working in those industries. So it's just not necessarily for students to matriculate, go to college, get a degree in architecture and engineering. Certainly that will occur. But also there'll be some students who'll be motivated to go right into trade unions. And Dawson Technical Institute is right there.
I've got to get you to talk another aspect of it.
Sure.
You were sustained all these years before you got this by volunteerism. Talk about the opportunities to be a volunteer or even some of the paid jobs that might come out of this.
Sure. So if you need any further information,
Yes.
certainly you could go to our website, www.Bronzeville Trail.
Repeat that for the slow writers.
Bronzeville Trail. And this the word bronze, VILLE trail.org. And our email address is bronzevilletrail@gmail.com.
Shout out to some
Again,
of
that's
those,
bronzevilletrail@gmail.com.
shout out to some of those folks that were the early influencers with your program.
Oh, absolutely. So our board chair is Mr. Walter Freeman,
Okay.
who owns a print company, the only unionized black-owned print company in the city. Mr. David Ali, who is a member of the Phillips High School Hall of Fame, has been very active with us. Ms. Gloria McDaniel, who hosts a CAN TV program.
Right here? Okay.
Right here for the Bronzeville Trail.
What can you say?
And so those are three principals, but Amadillo Kazan, Chris Devins, Sherry Williams, Bronzeville Historical Society. I mean, there's just a number of different, Zenobia Johnson Black is on our board.
Zenobia too, okay.
There are a number of different people who are involved in the Bronzeville community. And Stephen, what we looked for are people who were either residents of Bronzeville or institutional stakeholders in Bronzeville, headed up a company or not-for-profit school, whatever the case may be. And then lastly, people like myself and perhaps you, who were raised, grew up in Bronzeville, born in Bronzeville,
Amen.
educated in Bronzeville, and who simply love the community and doing all we can to help build the community, build Bronzeville even further to where it is today.
It's going to be a destination place for people coming from all over the world.
Yes.
Just like they're going downtown to see the being, they're going to come
Yes.
to Bronzeville.
That's absolutely true, Steve. I mean, unbeknownst to us, we knew Roberts Temple would play a role in the trail project because the embankment is adjacent to Roberts Temple's parking lot. Okay, so we always knew at some point Roberts Temple was going to play an important role. We had no idea that there was a movement for Roberts Temple to become a national monument. And in 2023, President Joseph Biden named Roberts Temple a national monument, under the Antiquities Act. So to your point, Stephen, by the time, and it's going through renovations right now, but at the time it opens, the most conservative estimate is 500,000 to 1 million people a year for the first 3 to 5 years will be visiting Roberts Temple. Of course, there was a recent movie about Mamie and Emmett Till.
Hold on one second. I can see some hands. Those people got the hands. How many people want Robert John E. Adams back again? Raise your hand. See, I knew you had a fan club out here.
I got a fan club. Thank you, Steve.
Yes,
Okay.
I knew that.
I'll cash app everybody when this is over.
Got a phone number? Want to repeat
Absolutely.
the information?
773-726-7900 is our phone number. 773 again, 726-7900. If for any reason the voicemail is full, please feel free to text me. That is a cell phone number. And I'll get the text and return the call promptly.
And the next one, you'll probably talk about your new headquarters, wherever that might be.
That's right. Lord willing, we will.
Folks, thank you. Remember, vive voce, pass the word on, and nota bene, take all the notes, keep that information, pass it on. Thank you for joining us today, my brother.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Don't give me the shake.
I ain't going to give it. You don't give your shake away, I won't give my shake away.
Fair.
All right, then.